Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, January 15th. We're in the middle of the week, in the middle of the month of January, and certainly looks like an interesting weather pattern going forward, especially beginning this weekend throughout much of next week. Not only will we have bitter cold air overspreading much of the nation, there will be multiple storm threats to deal with as well, and even some activity before we get to the upcoming weekend that we'll talk about in a moment or two. Haven't taken a look at sea surface temperature anomalies in a while here, so I thought we'd start off with a look at what's going on across the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. The winter forecast that we put out here at ArcfieldWeather.com focused on a La Nina type of winter, and indeed we are experiencing a La Nina event in the tropical part of the Pacific Ocean with sea surface temperatures generally colder than normal in the eastern and central part of the tropical Pacific Ocean. Indeed, that particular trend is now for slight weakening of the La Nina as we move forward over the next several weeks. That was expected as well. It will make for quite an interesting second half of the upcoming winter season as well. And the first half is pretty darn interesting also. Well, here is a look at the sea surface temperature anomaly pattern right now in the tropical Pacific. The equator runs right along this area right here. So a lot of colder than normal conditions, and the central part of the Pacific Ocean is about a degree below normal. We'll see those actual temperatures in a moment. And again, it's been starting to bottom out and maybe starting to trend up a little bit less colder than normal than it was a little while ago here. But again, this is La Nina continues here across much of the central Pacific Ocean. Well, here is in fact the temperature trend of the central Pacific, of what we call the El Nino region 3.4. That's we'll kind of separate the tropical Pacific Ocean into different boxes or different regions, and the central Pacific Ocean is this one right here, 3.4. And again, the trend is still for below normal temperatures, but less so than a couple of weeks ago. Here we are right now, and again, it's roughly averaging about a degree below normal. This is the normal line right here. You notice it kind of bottomed out relative to normal back in late December and creeping up since then. And I think this trend will probably continue. We'll get closer and closer to the neutral zone here as we get later and later into the winter season. So we're still experiencing that La Nina winter as we expected, and that was the key to our analog analysis, which we'll show in a moment here from our winter outlook. But again, the La Nina will tend to weaken over the next several weeks as we head towards the latter part of the winter season into the early part of spring. Well, just to revisit the analog temperature outlook for this upcoming winter based on what I chose, several different winter seasons that I thought mimic quite well what to expect this winter season, specifically with a La Nina event that was preceded by an El Nino prior winter. That is the case that we are experiencing right now. This is a La Nina winter, and we had El Nino a year ago. So I kind of specifically chose what turned out to be about 5 analog years, and take the average of those temperature anomalies for those 5 years, and this is what we came up with. That's why we kind of expected below normal temperatures on average, maybe slightly below it when it's all said and done in places like the Mid-Atlantic region, but largely based on this kind of an analog analysis. And indeed, it's looking pretty accurate right now with a large part of the nation below normal so far in the month of December and now January, and probably the worst is yet to come here next week. Looks like it may be the worst in terms of bitter cold air widespread over a vast majority of the nation, and we'll get into that over the next couple of sets of forecast maps. That last map, by the way, was out there on our arcfieldweather.com website under seasonal outlooks from the winter outlook that we issued, I guess, back in October. Wanted to take a look here, walk through the Canadian model. I believe this has a little better handle on the situation in terms, especially in terms of the Arctic wave that I do believe will form along that frontal boundary zone later in the upcoming weekend and likely produce some snow places like the Mid-Atlantic region on Sunday, excuse me, into Sunday night. Let's start off here by looking at the vorticity field. These are areas in the upper part of the atmosphere where there's some rotation, usually associated with what we call jet streaks, leads to upward motion down the lower levels of the atmosphere. That in turn is where clouds and precipitation and surface low pressure areas can form. So this is, again, a useful parameter to look at where there may be activity to follow in the atmosphere in terms of lows and precipitation. First of all, we have a wave out here in the middle part of the nation as we begin the day here on Wednesday, and that just kind of slides to the south and east. And notice here, by the time we get to tomorrow morning, quite a vast area of what we call cyclonic vorticity. This can be called a clipper. It's dropping from northwest to southeast across the Great Lakes. On Thursday, it'll definitely produce some accumulating snow over the Great Lakes region, and I think enough of that energy will make its way over the mountains to produce some snow later tomorrow into tomorrow night, places like Philadelphia, New York City, maybe all the way down to D.C. as well. And I do believe there's small accumulations possible in the Mid-Atlantic region. We're talking maybe a coating to an inch or so later tomorrow into early tomorrow night, and unfortunately may be correlated with the evening commute on Thursday. But again, did not want to ignore this. This is a decent disturbance that can produce some snow in the Mid-Atlantic region later tomorrow into tomorrow night. Then we move forward here. Friday turns out to be a moderately chilly day in the Mid-Atlantic region. For example, temperatures may reach 40 degrees in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, which is a lot better than what we'll experience today. And then we get into the day on Saturday. I definitely see a little bit milder weather here in the eastern U.S. on Saturday as a frontal system moves in. There will be rain shower activity breaking out in the Mid-Atlantic region, but it may be cold enough for some snow and ice pellets to mix in at times, especially early in the day on Saturday. This is not necessarily a completely liquid event here on Saturday. Temperatures may peak out about 40 degrees in the big cities along the I-95 corridor region. So that's on Saturday. Then on Sunday, we have the Arctic front, and we'll see that more clearly on the temperature anomaly maps and the surface forecast maps. But a strong Arctic front moves through the eastern U.S. during the day on Sunday, and that paves the way for this bitter cold air mass to spread into the eastern states by the time we get to late Sunday, Sunday night, Monday night. I do believe there may be single-digit low temperatures even in the big cities on Monday night, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. It'll be a very cold inauguration day for any outdoor activities on Monday, with likely temperatures, let's say in the low to mid 20s in D.C. at noon on Monday. A wind chill, a very noticeable wind chill because it will be windy as well, bringing the way it feels to much lower levels than the actual air temperature. But here is an interesting area of vorticity on Sunday. The Arctic front will be kind of slowing down, at least on its southeastern flank here, right in this area right here. And there's enough energy here, I think, for an Arctic wave to develop along that incoming frontal boundary zone. And here it goes off to the north and east, and I think enough energy to produce some snow in the Mid-Atlantic region. The GFS model is downplaying this. It really has nothing to speak of on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening with respect to this threat of snow. And I favor the Canadian model because I do believe this is a scenario where an Arctic wave will develop along that frontal boundary zone and likely produce some snow on Sunday into Sunday night in the Mid-Atlantic region. That moves on by, and then Just moving quickly forward through next week, we have another impressive area of vorticity diving to the south and east. By the middle of the week, that could produce a storm system down over the Gulf region. By the middle of next week, that could ultimately move up to the north and east along the eastern seaboard. A little too early to say exactly where that ends up, but that is certainly another storm threat the middle of next week. One that could produce snow and ice way down in the southern U.S. here. And just to move quickly forward here to show there's yet another wave of interest towards the end of next week that could produce potentially a third storm threat. Sunday night, possibility, midweek, maybe even at the end of next week, there could be another system developing down, way down over the deep south, over the Gulf of Mexico region. Well, let's walk through the 850 millibar temperature anomaly forecast maps, again using the 0Z run of the GFS. Very, very cold to start the day here in much of the eastern part of the nation. Arctic air certainly firmly in place here. And then we'll move forward into the day on Thursday. And again, watch for that disturbance crossing over the Great Lakes, producing snow. And ultimately, I think some snow will make its way all the way to the south and east of the Appalachian Mountains into the I-95 corridor region, especially Philly and New York City. Northeastern PA could get a few inches out of this, but I think there can even be some snow or snow showers all the way down to the D.C. metro region. Stays kind of chilly on Friday. Earlier in the week, I would say it looked a little warmer than it does now for Friday in the eastern part of the nation. May struggle to get out of the upper 30s, let's say, in places like Philadelphia and New York City. Earlier in the week, it looked like it would probably end up in the 40s. Not so sure about that right now. And that kind of paves the way for Saturday. Relatively milder conditions here across the eastern part of the nation as we get into the day on Saturday. But again, it may be cold enough at some of the surface levels in the mid-Atlantic region for rain shower activity to potentially be mixed with some ice pellets or even some snowflakes on Saturday. That is with an initial frontal system here, but take a look upstream. This is the midday Saturday forecast map, and here we go with this incredibly impressive Arctic blast here dropping into the central part of the nation by midday on Saturday. Now, let's move forward here and watch this drop to the south all the way into Texas and then slide to the east. And here we go on Sunday evening forecast map. The real Arctic front is right in this region right here, and I do believe be a low pressure system that may form right along that incoming boundary, that frontal boundary zone, that on the north and west side will feature this brutal cold air. Look at that. These are well below normal temperatures by Sunday night. You look on the scale over here, we're talking 20 to 30 degrees below normal in what is really, from a climatological point of view, the coldest week of the year. The third week of January in many places is when these average temperatures bottom out. So you're talking 20 to 25 degrees below normal in what is, statistically speaking, the coldest time of the year. That is impressive indeed. More than just impressive, it could be some dangerous cold here. And then we move forward into Inauguration Day on Monday, and that Arctic blast certainly reaches the D.C. metro region by the time we get to Monday. Again, temperatures way below normal at noon on Monday, probably actual temperatures in the low to mid 20s in D.C. Wind chills maybe way down in single digits during the day on Monday, and again, a single digit actual air temperatures likely Monday night, places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Just a very, very impressive look here. It's not only far below normal, but it's extremely expansive, really covering the entire nation by the time we get to the midday on Monday, January 20th. Again, this is using the Canadian model, but certainly all the models tend to forecast such an event here in terms of the bitter cold and the expansiveness of the bitter cold here. Then we move into the middle part of next week, and it's at this time that we'll have to watch down here across the Gulf region for the possibility of another storm system by the middle part of next week. And boy, if it turns to the north, it certainly will have a lot of cold air to work with. Once that Arctic air moves in early next week, Sunday night, Monday timeframe, into the mid-Atlantic, into the northeast U.S., it'll be hard to dislodge, that's for sure. And these kind of temperatures will make news for sure, way down in places like Texas here. This is just far, far below normal. Very, very cold spell coming up for even the deep south. We move out ahead here into the latter part of next week, and still, as of Thursday of next week, still a wide area, much of the nation below normal. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps, again using the 0Z run of the Canadian model. And I'm not just choosing this because I would like to see snow, let's say, in the Mid-Atlantic region on Sunday. I'm choosing this model here because I believe it has a better handle on the snow than the GFS. I agree with this solution as compared with what I'm seeing with the GFS right now. That may change over the next day or two, but we'll see right now what happens here. First of all, in the near term, we have this Clipper system dropping south and east over the Great Lakes region, producing some snow on Thursday, and that should make its way all the way into the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains, I believe. Later tomorrow night, I think we'll see some snow showers. Philly, New York City, maybe all the way down into the DC metro region later tomorrow, into tomorrow night. Again, small accumulations possible, not a big event by any means, but the timing may not be that good. May be correlated with the evening commute on Thursday, maybe a coating to an inch or so, especially when you get up to northeastern PA. I think maybe 2 or 3 inches possible there. Then we go through Friday into the day on Saturday. This is when we have slightly milder weather across much of the eastern states, but still cold enough that some areas can see some snow or even ice mixed in with the rain showers that I expect to develop here on Saturday across the eastern states. And then we start looking at that Arctic air mass. And here we go, by the time we get to, let's say, Sunday morning, we have an Arctic frontal system right in this region right here. And it tends to stall out as it drives into the southeastern part of the nation. And here's where I think a wave of low pressure will form right along that frontal boundary zone by early on Sunday. Again, the GFS model does not have this right now, it basically suppresses any activity. Now we'll move forward here, and the Canadian model develops it, and this is when colder air, it'll be turning increasingly colder, places like DC at this particular time. So there may be rain or snow that changes to snow if indeed this wave of low pressure forms along that incoming Arctic boundary zone here, and likely produces some snow, I think, in the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. later Sunday into Sunday night. That moves on through by Monday morning. And here we go, by Monday morning, we have this Arctic blast fully in place in the mid-Atlantic region by Monday, Inauguration Day. Look at this pressure gradient right here. We've had this many, many times, tight pressure gradient, very strong winds. That will make it feel much colder than the actual temperatures. If you're outdoors for any inauguration activities, for example, in the DC metro region, it's going to be very, very cold indeed. And we'll move forward here towards the middle part of next week. And again, there's that threat down, way down in the deep south. And when you see a lot of colors this time of the year, that's not a good thing, because this suggests a possibility of some significant icing way down in the deep south, in addition to significant snow way down in the deep south by the time we get to Tuesday night and even into Wednesday. And again, there's a chance, it's not a guarantee by any means, but there's a chance that this moves north and east up along the Atlantic seaboard, producing some snow at midweek into the mid-Atlantic region. A little too early to be certain about that, but the threat is real for the middle part of next week. And we'll just kind of quickly move forward here and talk about that potential third possibility here by the end of next week. This is all the way out to next Friday. Again, maybe a third system to deal with the Sunday night system, a potential system in midweek, and a potential system at the end of next week. So a lot of interesting weather across the nation, and really even going through the next 48 hours will be quite interesting in some parts of the area. But certainly by the weekend, we'll have that bitter cold Arctic air mass with some of its origins, by the way, on the other side of the North Pole over Siberia, working its way down into the central part of the nation, dives to the south, spreads out to the east. We'll have to watch for an Arctic wave of low pressure to form on Sunday along that incoming boundary zone, and then bitter cold conditions to follow that. That's it for now. For ArcFieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.